Good morning, everybody. My name is Nicole Gattuso, and I am a data associate with ECOG-ACRIN. So today I'm going to be walking us through how to complete a site transfer. So just a quick overview, a site transfer would be the process of moving a subject from one site to another. So there are three main processes involved in completing a site transfer request. I'd just like to note that once completed, only the new institution will have access to the subject's data, as EA does not allow subject sharing. So the transferring site will start the process by initiating the request in open, and at this time the subject's data should be as up-to-date as possible with copies of all CRFs and subject records submitted to the receiving site prior to making the transfer. And it would be nice if a listing of any data that cannot be resolved prior to the transfer taking place is submitted. So it's important to note that transferring site will be subject to an audit for any visit prior to the point of transfer. So the next process would be for the receiving site, and they will then review the request. It's helpful to know that once the request is accepted, the receiving site will assume the responsibility for all data, including any delinquent data from the originating site, and they will also be subject to audit of a case after the time of transfer. So the receiving site must have an active IRB status for the study and a treating investigator with an active CTSU membership. The patient has to be reconsented per local institutional IRB, and in some cases there may not be a subject record established. So if this is the case for a transfer that you guys find yourself working on, you'll have to establish the record in open, so basically just submitting enrollment forms and the documents for the transfer. At this time, you'll also need accredited organization for follow-up for payment and audit purposes. LPO review is not always required, but if it is required in your case, the site and LPO users will be notified by email once request decision is made. And if it's not required, then the accepted request would just automatically be approved and all of the updates will immediately be applied. So from this point forward, we'll go through how to complete the initiation of a site transfer, and this will be an open. So the first step will be to log into open and select the TUM tab. The page will reload at this point, and you will select the new subtab followed by the site transfer option. At this time, you'll arrive at a log table. This is not pictured here, but at the top, you can see where you would select the subject enrollment for transfer. The page will reload, and then you'll see what is pictured on the screen. And you can click into the box to type in the CTEP ID. Once you enter the CTEP ID, the drop-down list will kind of update and have applicable selections for the site that you've entered. And then every field with a red asterisk will require a selection. I wanted to note too that the comment must be entered prior to clicking submit. Like sometimes comments are optional, but in this case you must enter a comment. Once you click submit, the screen will refresh again. You'll have a TNM request number, and the request will be sent to the receiving site for review. The receiving site will have 45 days to review this request, and if they do not complete the request within the 45 days, there will be automatic cancellation. They'll be reminded by email every 14 days. Users at the receiving site will automatically get the email, and the first thing they'll want to do is log into open, locate the request, click select. Once the page reloads, select the review request button, and the page will refresh again to display the transfer information. If it's decided that your site will reject the transfer, the first two sections of this form would not be applicable and they could be skipped. So you would skip step 6 and 7, and you will just, again, complete any field with a red asterisk before clicking submit. So it's also important to note that depending on the LPO, a mandatory transplant credit question will appear to allow the user to specify whether transplant credit is involved. You would then either click reject or accept. You'll see a pop-up message, and once you click OK, the screen will refresh with the outcome of the request submission displaying at the top of the screen. So accepted requests may or may not require LPO review. If you find yourself in the situation of a patient transfer, you could always refer to the CTSU, and the TUM user guide will provide further instruction, especially as outlined in the slides. And if there are any questions, you can feel free to send them to the EA transfer alias or directly to me at ngattuso@ecog-acrin.org.